It was supposed to be an ordinary evening at a quiet farmhouse in rural Germany, but on March 31st, 1922, 6 lives were wiped out in one of the most disturbing unsolved crimes in history. A family slaughtered with a farm tool, a baby killed in his crib, and a murderer who didn't just vanish, but stayed on the property, living among the corpses. This is the haunting story of the Hinterkaifeck murders. The Gruber family lived in isolation on their farmstead, Hinterkaifeck, about 70 kilometers from Munich. The household was made up of Andreas Gruber, 63, the strict, often unpleasant patriarch, his wife Casilia, 72, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, 35, Victoria's 2 children, 7-year-old Casilia and baby Joseph, less than 2 years old, and finally their new maid, Maria Baumgartner, who had started her job only hours before tragedy struck. To outsiders, the Grubers were strange. They kept to themselves, and rumors swirled about their dark family secrets. Some believed Andreas and Victoria were involved in an incestuous relationship, with Josef possibly being their child. This scandal made them disliked and isolated in the village, but no one could have predicted the nightmare to come. Weeks before the crime, Andreas Gruber noticed bizarre happenings. Footprints in the snow led from the forest to the farmhouse, but none returned. Inside, strange noises echoed from the attic as though someone was walking above them. Andreas searched but found nothing. A key to the house vanished. A newspaper appeared that nobody subscribed to. Neighbors reported seeing a man watching the farm from the woods. Andreas dismissed it all. Days later, the killer would strike. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, someone lured family members into the barn one by one. Perhaps they heard noises, perhaps they were called out. We'll never know. There, each was struck down with a mattock, a heavy pickaxe-like farming tool. Andreas was killed first, then Casilia, then Victoria, and finally the little girl. Inside the house, the maid Maria was killed in her room, her body covered with straw. Baby Joseph was murdered in his crib, a crib that had been placed in Victoria's room. The crime was brutal, personal, and merciless. For most killers, the crime scene is something to flee, but the murderer of Hinterkaifeck stayed. Investigators later discovered that someone remained at the farmhouse for several days. Food was eaten, the fireplace was used. Even the livestock was fed and the cows were milked. The neighbors, unaware of what had happened, noticed smoke rising from the chimney and assumed the family was busy inside. But in reality, 6 corpses lay just a few meters away. On April 4th, neighbors grew concerned. The family had not been seen for days, and little Casilia had missed school. When they went to investigate, they found the barn sealed. Inside, under hay, lay the bodies of Andreas, his wife Victoria, and her daughter. Inside the house, they found the maid and the infant, lifeless. The police arrived and began what would become one of the most confusing investigations in German history. At first, robbery was suspected, but valuables and money were left untouched. Whoever committed this crime wasn't motivated by greed. Police interviewed more than 100 people over the years, yet the case only grew stranger. One theory suggested that Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor and rumored lover of Victoria, was responsible. He had fathered a child with her before, and some suspected he was also Joseph's real father. Lorenz had quarreled with Andreas and had reasons for resentment, but no solid evidence tied him to the murders. Another theory blamed former farm workers, who may have held grudges against Andreas for his harsh treatment. Still, no proof. Some believed the killer was a stranger hiding in the attic. The strange noises, missing key, and footsteps supported this horrifying idea that the murderer lived above them for weeks, watching, waiting, and planning. Shockingly, the crime scene was poorly handled. Curious neighbors trampled through the house before police secured it. The family's heads were even removed for forensic study. But during World War II, they were lost. Crucial evidence disappeared, suspects aged or died, and the case went cold. To this day, historians and armchair detectives argue over who was responsible. Was it Lorenz Schlittenbauer acting out of jealousy or anger, a wandering vagrant who struck and then stayed? Or was it, as many fear, someone who had been living in the attic, watching the family until the night he killed them? No theory has ever been proven. The farmhouse was eventually demolished, leaving only a memorial where it once stood. But the story of the Hinterkaifeck murders still chills people around the world. 6 innocent people slaughtered in their home, a killer who lingered in silence, and an investigation that left behind only questions. Even now, over a century later, the case remains unsolved. A terrifying reminder that sometimes the most horrifying killers are never caught.